Once there was a woodcutter with two children and their stepmother. The boy's name was Hansel, and the girl's name was Gretel. They lived so poorly that sometimes there was not even anything to eat. And then one evening he lay in bed, pondering how to feed the children further. His wife advised him to have children in the forest, light a fire, give a piece of bread each and leave them there, not all four of them die of hunger. But the woodcutter did not agree. And until then, his wife persuaded him that he finally agreed. And the children, because of hunger, also could not sleep and heard everything that their stepmother said to their father. And when the parents fell asleep, Hansel secretly rushed out of the house. The moon was shining brightly, and the white stones glittered like coins. Hansel pocketed as many of them as he could fit. Then he returned home and the children went to bed. In the morning, the stepmother came to the children, gave each of them a piece of bread, and they all went to the forest together. On the way, Hansel threw out white stones one by one. When they arrived at the clearing, my father began to light a fire. He ordered the children to sit near the fire and make sure that it didn't go out, while they and their stepmother would go for more firewood. They sat, tired, and fell fast asleep. When the children woke up, it was a dark night all around. And when a full month had risen in the sky, Hansel took his sister by the hand and went, looking for the way through the pebbles, which glittered like new coins, and showed them the way. They walked all night long, and at dawn they came to their father's house. Some time passed. And the children again heard how the stepmother one night began to beg their father to get rid of the children. He refused, but his wife did not want to listen to him. She cursed and expressed all sorts of reproaches to him. When the parents fell asleep, Hansel, like the last time, wanted to collect stones, but the stepmother locked the door and the boy could not leave the house. Early in the morning, the children were given a piece of bread each, even less than the previous time. On the way to the forest, Hansel shredded his piece in his pocket and threw the crumbs on the ground. The stepmother took them even further into the forest. Again a big fire was lit, and the father ordered the children to watch the fire while they and their stepmother chopped some more wood. When lunchtime came, Gretel shared her piece of bread with Hansel. And they fell asleep. We woke up when the dark night fell. And then a month came up, and they got together on their way, but they could not find a single crumbs, because thousands of birds fluttering in the forest had long been eating those crumbs. So the children walked for a very long time, but they could not get out of the forest. Suddenly, the road led them to the hut. Coming closer, the children saw that the house was all built of bread and biscuits, and the windows were made of pure sugar. Hansel reached up and broke off a piece of the roof, while Gretel went to the window and began gnawing at its windows. And then the door in the hut opened wide, and the old woman came out, leaning on a crutch. Hansel and Gretel were so scared that they even dropped their tidbits from their hands. And the old woman was kind and invited them to her hut. There was already abundant food on the table: milk, cookies, apples, and nuts. After dinner, the old woman made 2 clean beds for the children, and Hansel and her sister thought they were in heaven. But the old woman only pretended to be affectionate, but in fact she was an evil witch, who built her bread hut for this purpose in order to lure children. Early in the morning, while the children were sleeping, she took Hansel and put him in a small cage. And she ordered her sister to do everything that the wicked witch demanded of her. The old woman decided to fatten the boy in order to eat him later. So Gretel began to cook the most delicious food for Hansel, and she herself got nothing but leftovers. Some time passed, and the boy did not get fat. Then the old woman did not want to wait any longer, and decided to cook and eat Hansel. She ordered Gretel to light the stove and apply water. When the stove warmed up, the old woman ordered her to climb into the stove and see if it was hot enough. So she wanted to push the girl into the fire and bake her. But Gretel knew what was on her mind. She said that she did not know how to get in there, and asked the witch to show herself. The old woman got angry and climbed into the oven. Then Gretel pushed her and slammed the shutter behind the witch. Wow, how terribly the old woman howled then. Gretel, meanwhile, rushed to Hansel and opened the cage. Having freed their brother, they went to the witch's room, in which there were boxes of pearls and precious stones in all corners, filled their pockets with them, and went home. For several days the children were looking for their way back. The forest seemed more and more familiar, and at last they saw their father's house in the distance. How glad he was to see his children alive. Hansel and Gretel poured on the floor all the pearls and gems they had taken from the witch. There was no need to think about food. And they began to live, live, and rejoice. And the father drove the evil stepmother out of the house. A little mouse lived in one forest. He was very cowardly, and he was afraid even of the noise of the wind. All the animals in the forest laughed at him. And then, one day, the little mouse gathered all his wool into a fist, and went to the king of the jungle. The lion had just finished his dinner, and was dozing quietly in the shade, snoring loudly. The mouse approached him, and began to climb up the tail. All the animals were curious about what he was up to. The little mouse was very scared, but he tried very hard not to notice it. He climbed onto the back of the lion, and stood before his friends with an important look. And then the lion woke up. With one movement he threw the mouse to the ground and growled menacingly. All other animals were very excited. They thought that the lion was about to swallow the mouse. But instead, the lion asked what he was doing on his back. Gathering all his wool into a fist, the mouse asked the king of the jungle to take him under his wing, so that he would not be afraid of anyone or anything else. Because he was the most cowardly animal in the forest. And in return he offered his help. The lion listened silently to the mouse. But he could not understand how a small mouse can help a large and strong lion. At first he laughed, and then with a loud roar chased the insolent man away. The mouse instantly ran away, glad that the lion would not eat him. All the other animals ran after him. Some time has passed. The lion got hungry and went hunting. But he did not notice the trap set by the hunters and fell into it. The king of beasts hung in the air, caught in a hunting net. He tried to get out of it, but could not do it. And since the lion was the king of the jungle, he could not bring himself to scream for help.
No.
Besides, hunters could hear him. The animals saw the lion, but no one dared to come close to him. And the lion decided to trust fate, doing nothing. Quite by chance, the same little mouse was nearby. Seeing the king of beasts in the nets, he decided to help him. The little mouse climbed up the long tail of the lion, and when it reached the net, began to gnaw at it. After some time, a whole crowd of animals gathered near the trap. It was interesting for everyone to watch what was happening. Suddenly, somewhere far away, the cry of the hunters was heard. The animals got very scared and fled into the forest. But the mouse continued to stubbornly gnaw at the net. Eventually, the net broke and the lion freed himself from it. Without thinking twice, the mouse climbed onto his back, and they ran away. When the lion got to his cave, he apologized to the mouse. And he said that he had underestimated such a small animal, deciding that it would not be of any use. And for the fact that the little mouse saved the life of the king of beasts, now he no longer needs to fear anything or anyone. From now on, the lion takes him under his wing. All the animals, watching what was happening, laughed and applauded the brave mouse. Since then, the lion and the mouse have become best friends, and peace has reigned in the forest forever.